All right, so let's talk about archetypes. What are they? There's a lot of traffic outside. Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Melissa. I'm so glad that you're here today at the Creatives Tarot. Just to give you a little bit of info about myself, I am a writer, a podcast host, and also I read tarot. And so I wanted to create a space where I could show others the power of tarot and how they can use tarot in their creative practice. So today we're going to be talking about how I use tarot cards and tarot readings and spreads to create characters for my stories and my scripts. And one of the tools that I just purchased about 4 months ago was this. This is the Archetype cards. They're a little hard to see on camera, but I'll put the link in the description below. These are the Archetype cards by Caroline Myss. And they're, I have mixed feelings about them. They're actually really helpful, but I'm going to do a complete review, tell you what I like, what I don't like, how much they cost, why you should get them, and how you can use them in your writing. So before I move forward, make sure you click that subscribe button and hit the bell so that you don't miss out on future content. And welcome to the family. Let's go. All right, so let's talk character development. I know this is a big thing for any of my writers or creators out there. How do you create dynamic, original, authentic characters? For me, the first place that you start is understanding their core personality, what motivates them, what drives them, what are their flaws, what are their weaknesses, etc. And you're going to be able to do that by looking at different tools, psychological tools that have been used throughout history, including archetypes. So that is why we're talking about archetypes today. It's important to note that these personality assessments and types and archetypes, those are not stereotypes. And this doesn't have anything to do with physical appearance. It doesn't have anything to do with race. It doesn't have anything to do with gender. This is more about people's personality, how they perceive themselves, and how they are perceived by the world, and breaking folks into those broader categories. Now, in this deck, which I said, this is the Archetype Cards by Caroline Myss, and these are a little bit older. This came out in 2003. There's 78 cards here, which is a lot. Okay, you guys, it's a thick deck. There's a lot of different cards, but that's really great when you're writing a story because you have a lot of flexibility and a lot of diversity in characters. What I love about using this, or even thinking about archetypes more broadly, is that when I'm writing, it makes sure that all of my characters don't sound the same. They don't act the same. For example, a lot of new writers will write themselves into their stories, right? They're just creating versions of themselves as the characters. And then you're minimizing the amount of conflict you have because they all agree, because they all come from the same backgrounds and they all think the same way and they all have the same flaws or shadow sides or dark sides, and they all have the same goals and hopes and dreams, and therefore there's no diversity, there's no conflict, there's no story really, and no character growth. They're just doing things. So I think it's important to look at archetypes or enneagrams or anything like that that's going to make sure that you have a diversity of perspectives, but also a diversity of ways in which people process information and move forward. So Myers-Briggs is another personality assessment that I think is really helpful for writers when they're doing character development. Okay, so now that we've got that clear and we know that character archetypes are not stereotypes, they're not connected to our gender or our race, let's talk about what's in this deck. There's 78 cards, and each card has the name of an archetype that she has created, along with a light attribute and a shadow attribute. What I love about this is that when I'm using this to create characters, often they start with the shadow attribute, and my goal is to get them to the light attribute by the end of the story. So that creates a general start and end point for your character arc or your character growth. The other thing that I found really useful is I don't use just one archetype. I will draw as many as I need for a character and see like what happens when I combine these different traits. So here we go. I just pulled the top three. So we have the Messiah, we have the Damsel, and we have the the victim. There it is. And we have the victim. So what happens when these characteristics or traits are all portrayed in one person? How does that create internal conflict for our characters? And how does it create external conflict in terms of how they're being perceived? And what I love about this is it makes it really unique and dimensional, because they could be seen as a messiah by society, but they don't view themselves as a messiah, right? If they have secret powers or something like that, people may expect them to use that power to fulfill a prophecy or a destiny, but they might look at it as a disadvantage. They might feel like the victim. Like, let's talk about Harry Potter, for example. Like, that's a classic example of somebody being the chosen one for that journey, but him feeling like the victim at the start of that series because he's an orphan. So he doesn't have any parents. He's living with these mean aunts and uncles in the stair closet, right? Like, he doesn't have a bedroom. He's being bullied, right? He often feels like the victim, not like the chosen one or the messiah. And that's a character growth that you can do. So these are really great for like pulling a handful of cards and seeing, okay, what's their story like if this is a messiah and also a teacher? What are they teaching? What information are they trying to spread? How are they taking advantage of their situation or their position to spread information or to share information with a larger society? Okay, so a couple of things that I don't like about this deck. It is a big deck, right? And it has this glossy coating on it. You can see how shiny it is, right? So it has this glossy coating on it, which makes it very difficult to shuffle at first. The more I use it and the more worn it gets, it starts to get a little bit easier. But these cards very easily stick together because of the glossy coat. And it's the only thing I do not like about the deck. But that said, sometimes I would say to spread them out on the table like so and draw cards instead of trying to shuffle. You're definitely going to have more difficulty shuffling like this. It's possible, but it's not my preferred way to do it because you'll see these like are kind of like sticking together. So you're not getting a lot of traction. Things are going to come out in clumps and it's not going to be a very good read. So it's definitely one of those things where, shuffle it as best you can or mix them up as best you can and then pick from the top, or spread them out, fan them out, and pick from different spots. The other thing that I love about this is if I don't like what I drew, I put it back. So this isn't like, I think this would be a lot harder to use as a tarot reading. If I was doing a reading for somebody, I would not use these cards because they stick together so much, because there's so much weight in like who they are and their identity. I feel like I don't know. I feel like it's a little harder to receive messages that are authentic from this deck. And maybe that's just because I haven't like deeply connected with the deck yet, but I personally wouldn't use it for traditional readings. But for character development or world building, story building, I think it's fantastic. So like, look, we've got the wounded child. I'll just walk through a couple of these. The orphan, the saboteur, the hermit, liberator, the servant. And so essentially she says that these are based off of 12 different archetypes. And then she goes in, and I don't know if they're color coded or not, but I think they are. So like all the greens are connected to a certain line, but I could be wrong. So yeah, so that's a lot of fun. And you can use that for all different characters. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, okay, tell me about the protagonist. Okay, let's draw some cards for the antagonist. Let's draw some cards for the supporter, like the mentor. Who is the mentor? Who's at play? And I'll just let the cards like come up and we'll see what kind of stories we get. There is a guidebook. This is the guidebook. It's pretty thick. And it has illustrations in it, which is nice, but there's not, that takes up a lot of the space here. It's not super in depth. And to be honest, I think I only use it when the description on the card isn't deep enough for me to understand like the intention behind this role, or if I need more clarity to find connection between this trait and another archetype that came up for that character or that's in conflict with that character. So if I'm looking here, you'll see there's like 4 or 5 different examples of like the mother card and what that means and what it can look like and represent. So if you're feeling stuck and you're like, I still don't know what the story is, this is a great little reference. She does have a full like hardback book that goes along with this, but I don't think that's necessary for writing. I think it's too in depth, and people often will get lost in that aspect of like trying to make their characters perfect. And I'm like, you just need a framework for your characters before you start writing, so that when you write and they encounter certain situations in the plot, you have a feeling and a sense of how they're going to react. Are they going to overreact? Are they going to underreact? Are they going to be bored? Are they going to be angry? Are they going to be scared and, you know, turn to their vices? And what are their vices if that's their pattern, right? So you need to know those things. You don't necessarily need to know their favorite clothing or, you know, their favorite drink or where they go to party on Saturday nights. You don't need to know all those details until you're writing them and you're in the scene and you're like, okay, now I need to know what they're going to choose, or now I need to know where they're going to go when they're angry or when they're avoiding people. So that's my review on this. I will say a couple of other things on character development. I mentioned the Enneagram, and I will definitely do a video on that because I'm a big fan of how that breaks down personality types as well. This book here is the 45 Master Characters book. I can see the dust jackets coming off here. But yeah, this is also a really helpful book if you like archetypes, and that's a good framework for you. And essentially, I think there's, I don't know, there's 30 something, or well, there's 45. There's 45 in here, but they're based off of like 7 or 8 key categories and groupings. What this does is it lists the different archetypes, and then you see like a handful of different traits. So you get to see how this person shows up in film and television. So you could see Apollo in action, Aries, like some of these different personality traits, what they look like, what they do, what their tendency is. So it's basically, what do they care about? What does their growth look like in terms of character arc? What are their flaws? What are their motivations? What are their desires? And then examples of these different archetypes in media. So that's really helpful reference. I'm sure you can find this at most libraries. This is also an older book that I've had for many, many years. So there's probably a cheaper paperback version out there somewhere. Yeah, this was 2001 was when this came out. It's a Writer's Digest book. So check that out too if you want more insight on how to do characters, and stay tuned because I'm going to do a quick little video where I'm just going to create a character right here for you. So also, if you like this, give it a thumbs up so other people know to come and check out the video. And it also lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. All right, bye. I'm just going to leave it in, you guys.